Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
And welcome back, everybody. So many of us have considered potentially a career change or even just changing jobs. And we kind of put it on the back burner because we know there's a lot involved in that. Of course, the resume and the whole process of applying for jobs. We're going to talk with somebody today who offers one-on-one career counseling, job placement assistance, resume building as well. But he takes it in a totally different direction that gets you results. One of the most important things with that resume process is the interview, not the job interview, the interview that he does with somebody to get the right information to craft the right resume. He is Mark Berkowitz, and he's back with us on the program. Hey, Mark, how you doing?
Oh, doing really well today.
So your process is, you know what? I'm going to say old school, and I mean that in the best way possible when it comes to crafting somebody's resume, because you go on a fact-finding mission where so many people today that do resumes don't do that. It's just give me some details or give me your old resume and I'll regurgitate it and here you go. And then it's on to the next one. Your interview process is vitally important. Tell us about that.
Well, I find that the vast majority of my clients pretty much take themselves with a grain of salt. Well, doesn't everybody do it this way? No, that's not the case. Sometimes they've got some really, really unique attributes that are really, really highly valued, sellable assets.
I want to share with you somebody I know in the last 6 months that hired somebody to do a resume. It was under my recommendation. I heard this person was good. I connected the two people, so my friend and the resume writer, if you will, and the process didn't go well. And now that I'm seeing how it should go, talking to you, here's what transpired. It was basically fill out a form or send an email to the resume builder, and they crafted the resume. First of all, it took, I'm not exaggerating, at least 6 weeks to come up with something. And what my friend received was somewhat basic, and there was errors in there, including there was an entry about a charitable position that the person had in Canada. Well, my friend is here in the United States. They put that in there by accident. There was zero interview process. And they paid for that. They had to. They already paid up front. So there, drastic difference in terms of what you do, because you're going to hear from that person what skills they have, what little nuances that are going to be missed and maybe missed in their previous resume, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I know some of my colleagues have a fairly in-depth questionnaire, but I know that I'm not smart enough to anticipate everything that they might have done. And something that they tell me, uh, might be the tip of the iceberg, or in superhero terms, a little tingle with the spidey sense. And that leads us in a whole other direction. And that's where I get the good stuff. So when I'm interviewing somebody, okay, I'm not raking them over the hot coals, I'm not pulling fingernails. Euphemistically, I'm mining for hidden nuggets of gold. I'm looking for where they excel at something. And sometimes it's somebody else that recognizes that what they've done is actually really, really good for them, or a benefit to their organization.
Can you recall a situation that you extracted one of those nuggets of information that was beneficial, be it, somebody worked as a volunteer somewhere or their hobbies, whatever it might be, that translated to their job position, and you included that in the resume, but you probably wouldn't have known it unless you went through the interview process.
Absolutely. I had a friend of at that time, recent client that calls me, and she said, I don't understand it. I mean, I went to the same college as my buddy Gail. We did our student teaching at the same school. We started off teaching in the very same school in the South Bronx. That's part of New York City. And she's got this great job up in Westchester, and I'm still stuck in the South Bronx. So we had set up the time for her to come in, and I asked her, do you have any kind of portfolio or maybe photos of your classroom so I can get a sense of what the room is like? Okay, on the simple terms, is student work prominently displayed? Does she have a wall of words? If you're an elementary teacher, you know exactly what that is. And she brought in the a little bit of a photo album. So as she was filling out some contact information for me, I'm looking through the pictures, and I come across a photo of what looks like some green stuff on a dish. Okay, I could tell that it wasn't lime flavored jello, and it wasn't pistachio ice cream. What was it? I didn't know, so I had to ask. And she said, "Oh, well, we had read the Dr. Seuss book, Green Eggs and Ham, and we had a green eggs and ham breakfast." So I'm thinking to myself, oh, big whoop, so what? Who cares? And I don't want to have any statement on a resume that leads the reader to feel that way. Who cares? What's the big deal about this? So I happened to ask. And okay, did you do the cooking or did your students do the cooking? Oh, no, they did the cooking. Did you give them, detailed step-by-step instructions in the preparation of it? Yep. Did you teach them anything about measurements? Yes. Okay. So on the resume, I had a section titled Areas of Effectiveness, and this one had to do with interdisciplinary units. So here, what might seem like, well, how come you're not teaching the kids reading, writing, and arithmetic? The big 3 R's. However, it involved reading, it involved science, it had some social studies in there, and here she's credited with these putting together interdisciplinary units that named the different courses that she was pulling from. And without that photograph, I never would have known anything about that. And as I heard from her, when about a year and a half later, I was doing an update on her resume, and she's saying, "Oh, that's the one that they were really asking me about during the interview." So that's the thing that got her the job. Or here's this one guy working for a nearby manufacturing company, and did not have a bragging bone in his body. So I started off really, really simply. Did you ever make a change in the way you do something or make a recommendation to your boss that led to a change? Okay, and his answer was, well, we changed the preventative maintenance procedure on the sprayer heads. Okay, that sounds about as interesting as watching grass grow, concrete harden, or paint dry, and pick your favorite metaphor. Well, what's the difference between the way you used to do things and the way you're doing things now? Well, we're not breaking them and replacing them like we used to. Now, over the course of maybe 12, 15 minutes, I found out that a rebuilt sprayer head goes for the tune of about $75,000 a piece. On average, they had to swap them out somewhere between 5 and 7 times during the year. So what's the difference between the way you used to do things and the way you're doing things now? Well, we're not breaking them and replacing them like we used to. Well, when's the last time that you had to replace one? And he scratches his head and he goes, oh, about 4 years ago. Tell me, when was it that you innovated and instituted this cutting edge, state of the art preventative maintenance procedure? And he goes, oh, it's about 4 years ago. I grabbed out a calculator and I went really conservative. If you remember, he says that they were swapping these things out 5 to 7 times a year. I went with only 4. Do you realize in the last 4 years, you've saved your company, pretty close to $2 million, and that doesn't count for the time lost to shutting down the assembly line. Now, these sprayer heads that I'm talking about is not the stuff that you wash your car with or water your garden. Okay, it's a really, really technical thing. And what they are spraying goes into 2 different multi-billion-dollar products. But we don't have to get into that. But it's when you start getting somebody talking, okay, now we see some of what we're dealing with, and it's almost like peeling back the layers of an onion. And so what I'm looking to
Wow.
do is help them get the biggest bang for the buck.
You know what? It sounds, this is what comes clear, Mark. It's that we get so on the other side of this, so deep in the trenches, in the rabbit hole of work, where we're just doing what we're supposed to be doing and what we need to do, that we don't realize that we're making a difference. Like, talk about savings of the company. That guy's a superstar when you really look
He's
at
a,
it.
he's a superstar, and he wasn't thinking about it because it probably came to him really easy.
Sure.
Okay. And if you don't have to invest a whole bunch of effort, time, smarts, what have you, then you don't think it has much value. And that goes to people who are in a volunteer position. Just because they're not getting paid for what they do doesn't mean that it's without value.
Yes. Yeah, you could have somebody who volunteered at a job or they things that don't even stand out in their mind can correlate to what they do. So question, when you're building a resume, let's say somebody is applying for multiple jobs and they're different positions. It's kind of in line with what they do, but they're a little bit different. Can you create a resume where you just change a couple of things on the resume and it can be repurposed for two different positions?
Yes, I have found that most of my clients, their skills and experience qualify them for a number of different things. And generally, when I'm meeting them for the first time, I'll ask them to do a little bit of research in advance, whether it's old school in the actual help wanted ads or today's electronic variety via the internet. And I'll tell them, I don't care if it's a job advertised out in Walla Walla, Washington. If it's something that interests you, okay, I want to know about it because I want to know what it's called. Because, firstly, there ain't no rhyme or reason as to how a job is classified, i.e., what the job title is. I mean, one company's financial analyst is another company's business analyst. Okay,
Mm,
half of what I do, I consider myself a career counselor. If I wanted to do that for the US Army, I'm totally out of luck. They don't hire career counselors. They do have a military occupational specialty as a vocational counselor. What's the difference? There isn't. And the other thing that I'm looking at, sort of wearing my lawyer's hat, where I'm trying to build an airtight case leading to the verdict of you're hired. So I want to see what kinds of qualifications they're looking for. And as I'm looking at the resume that they're bringing me, looking to see, do I have any evidence they've actually done something like that?
mm.
Okay, because if I don't know about it, it can't wind up on their resume. And that leads to some brainstorming. And now I'm getting some anecdotes. I'm getting some real live situations where we can see what type of problem or challenge they faced, what action they took, and the results. Some of them we can quantify with numbers, and others we can qualify in terms of somebody getting the pat on the back, getting praise from somebody, earning the reputation as being the go-to guy for building whiz-bang formulas on, oh, I don't know, an Excel spreadsheet.
It reminds me of the title petroleum distribution engineer,
Oh, yeah.
somebody who pumps gas.
Mhm.
I mean,
Or
you,
the environmental control engineer for the building custodian.
which would be,
Well, the building custodian, the environmental control engineer. Uh, but are we an accountant? Are we a bookkeeper? Are we a trainer? Are we a teacher? Are we a coach? Sometimes there's not all that much difference, but depending on where you're working, it's got a different title. So this way, we're not having somebody eliminate potential job opportunities, before they even attempt getting the foot in the door. Uh, once I know what we're looking at as a couple of jobs, it could be 3, it could be 5, I tend to look at building the resume in a modular fashion, already knowing in advance how I'm going to want to adapt it so it's targeted towards that particular job objective. And it's going to be a lot easier for me, which maybe takes 20 minutes or so, maybe sometimes a little bit longer, of rearranging things, resequencing things, uh, changing a title from areas of effectiveness to selected career milestones. Uh, but it'll take me a lot less time to do that than to have one of my clients totally pulling their hair out, for 2 or 3 days, just trying to make a slight alteration in there. So I'm looking to, help this person get the best job that they possibly can. I want to put them sort of in the driver's seat where I'd rather have them complain to me about, here's this migraine headache they have. Mark, I got 3 or 4 different job offerings. Which one should I take? Help. So that's what I'm looking for rather than selling an individual resume. And at a resume writers convention a number of years ago, one of the newbies had asked one of the more experienced writers, well, what do you charge if they want you to do a second version of the resume? And the response was, well, 50% of what the resume costs, because I'll probably only be able to reuse about half of it. So I'm looking to get a job done rather than how many versions of a resume can I sell?
One thing is radically clear here, the importance of the interview before you do the resume. It's just I can't see anybody being able to do that effectively unless you have that communication. Even filling out forms on a website, just not going to get it done. Now, using the word interview, do you also offer coaching for let's say they use your resume, they get called in the job interview?
Yes, and as a matter of fact, I'm one of the first group of individuals to earn a credential called Certified Employment Interview Professional, because there's an art, a science, and a psychology to it. And, I help people in a lot of different ways. In some cases, it's, with the body language. In some cases, it's being prepared for what we might refer to as the silver bullet type of question, which tends to shoot somebody down in flames. Now, here's how we can prepare for that. Here's how we can deal with different type of situations. I mean, typically an interview might start off with something that might be seen as an icebreaker. So tell us a little bit about yourself. Okay. Well, I train my clients in at least 4 different ways to respond to it, depending on what they're comfortable with, or let's pick up on some cues. Some of them are body language from the interviewer. Some of it might be the office where it's being conducted with, where it could be, sure, I'd really love to. Where exactly would you like me to begin? Or I'm really good at A, B, C, and D. Which of these would you like to hear in a little bit more detail right now? And a couple of other ways that pretty much bounce it back into the employer's court so we can see what's really on their mind, because they're probably not really interested in which merit badges I might have earned, back in scouting, or how I chose my college major. So we get a sense of what their priorities are and can pretty much be on the same page with that. Because again, we have to view ourselves as a product to be sold. And if you're a salesperson, job number 1 is know your product. Know what the features and the benefits are in comparison to the competition. So how to best frame those particular achievements, accomplishments, skill set, experiences, so that it sells value, because the entire job market is predicated on the exchange of value. So exactly what can you do for us in exchange for, your compensation and benefits package.
You know what I'm picking up here with that job interview? The applicant is also interviewing the potential employer in some regards.
Absolutely. Because if you're making a decision, you want to make sure that it's going to be a comfortable fit with the organization.
Hmm.
And there are quite a number of questions that I coach my clients that here are the kinds of things that you really want to ask. You want to get a good handle on the job. I mean, a job at a decent salary could be, a 40-hour work week. It could be a 6-hour work week. Somebody fresh out of law school going in as an associate. I mean, they're basically an indentured servant, for quite a few years. So know what you're getting into.
I love your anecdotes. I love your examples. When it comes to the job interview itself, what about those hypothetical questions where they might say, all right, if this was the situation, what would you do? Any examples of ones that you've heard? And then how would you suggest that the applicant answers?
Well, I'd have them prepared for it and being comfortable with saying, well, I haven't done exactly that same thing if they haven't. But what hits really, really close to home is the time that we were at our organization, we were faced with thus and such. And be thinking in terms of, and here's the formula, your problem or a challenge, what you did about it, and some measurement of the result that you got, which is pretty much the same thing that we have for most of those bullet point statements on the resume itself. And I tell people that, this resume, if we do this right and we do it well, is literally going to be a blueprint for how the interview is going to progress. Because I'm going to put things down in such a way and use some of the text enhancements that are available with decent software to make certain phrases jump out off the page. Because I want to lead the interviewer literally by the nose into asking the kinds of questions that basically say to the client, would you please brag for us? Because a lot of us have been taught, hey, it's not nice to brag. It's rude to toot your own horn. But if we're not going to do it for ourselves, who's going to do it? And if I can, in advance, outthink the interviewer and have things down there so that the interviewer asks these particular questions, my client is being invited to brag about something that they did well, where somebody going in with your typical tombstone resume has a laundry list of duties and responsibilities.
Love it. I love your strategy, Mark, and how you do everything to help your client control as much as possible. With the right resume, it's basically you're handing your potential employer, a script for the job interview. You want them to ask these questions, but you have to find those fine points. We're out of time here today. I've learned a lot. Gotta tell you, when it comes to this whole process, what's the best way for somebody to find you?
The best way presently is going to be through my website. I've got a contact page where somebody can give me their contact information and something a little bit about what kind of help they look for. And my website is careerdevelopmentresource.com.
Appreciate you being here today. Thank you so much.
Oh, it was really good being with you. I really enjoyed the conversation.
Same. I learned a lot. And the strategy behind it, it's not just a resume. It is the blueprint for the job interview and so much more. We'll be right back.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you now have even more ways to listen live. Check out the MyTuner Radio, online radio box, and Simple Radio apps on iOS and Android, or find us online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com, or search Podcast Business News Network on streama.com and onlineradiobox.com/US. Take your podcast on the go and don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
Mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house. And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned.
This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.